Group 10 Masters, Part 4, Expanding Our Consciousness from Human to Soul to Spirit, video by Dr. Lisa Love. And we are continuing our series coming from the book Letters on Occult Meditation by Alice Bailey on Bailey Teaching's definition of who a master is. And this is the fourth video. We will have one more video after this, and then we'll be done with this series. Linked to Sirius. A master of the wisdom is he who has taken the first initiation that links him up with the greater brotherhood on Sirius. As afore I have told you, he is an initiate of the first degree in the greater lodge. He has attained an expansion of consciousness that has admitted him into touch with the solar system in many of its departments. Now he has ahead of him a vast reach of expansions that will eventually take him beyond systemic consciousness into something far greater and wider. He has to begin to learn the rudiments of that cosmic meditation that will admit him into a consciousness past our conceivable surmise, and that's on page 262. So first of all, some preliminaries here. I've said in almost every video, when you see in these quotes the male pronoun only, that's because this was written in 1920, as you see down there, September 14th, 1920. Over 100 years ago, everybody everywhere, all around the globe, only used the male pronoun. So to be true to these quotes, I'm keeping the male pronoun. Do not let that trip you up. So, some things to help you understand. We've been going through this entire series to help explain that most of humanity lives down here on the emotional plane. First and second degree initiates, and we'll come to this again later, live here. Third and fourth degree initiates here. A master is up here. I'm trying to represent that by this picture here. Very far away from where the masses are. And when we reach this level on the plane of the solar angel as a third and fourth degree initiate, our intellects, because we're on the mental plane, are so developed and so inclusive and so capable of synthesis, watch the videos on group 9, that we are able to understand a lot of the complexities of patterns and how things work on our planet. So we could say that this is planetary, here up here, to the spiritual or Atmic, intuitional Buddhic, mental monastic. A master is Atma, Buddhi, Manas, living within the triad. Sat, Chit, Ananda, it's called in the East, is living in here. A master has globalized consciousness and is able, even more than a third and fourth degree initiate who's only down here, to have that vast comprehensive understanding of the divine plan of what's going on within our planet. Remember, we are just cells within the body of our planet, or they call it the planetary logos here. And a master is able to have that vast comprehension that expands not only hundreds of years, not only thousands of years, but millions of years in attempting to understand the mind of our planet, the heart of our planet, the will of our planet, as is found in what's called Shambhala, or the kingdom of heaven, if we want to go to the book of Revelations. But a master is now attempting to move beyond that. So when we get up here into the monadic and divine or adi or logoic levels, plane of the logos, our planet, a master is starting to move not only at an increased comprehension of our planet, but beyond our planet. And when he is able to start going beyond our planet in that comprehension, he is taken the first initiation that links him up with the greater brotherhood on Sirius. Remember, an initiation means simply an expansion of consciousness. So he's taking the first expansion of consciousness that links him up beyond simply our planet and is even moving into the solar system and its many departments. And beyond that solar system, as he links up with the Greater Brotherhood on Sirius, taking only the first step there, he has ahead of him, or she, a vast reach of expansions of consciousness that takes him beyond systemic consciousness, our system, our solar system, into something far greater and wider. And therefore, he's beginning to learn cosmic meditations here. So here we have our planetary logos and the master again in touch with Shambhala. This is not meant to represent where Shambhala is. Some people say Shambhala is by Mount Meru or Mount Kailash. It's different places in different systems, but Shambhala is really not just a location. It is the will of our planetary logos, the head center of our planetary logos, we could say here. And again, the master has that globalized level of consciousness and has been working at a solar system awareness, not just our Earth, but what's going on in other planets, what's going on in the solar system as a whole. Now, this doesn't mean that you are simply an astronomer and you're a master. This isn't just about learning the physical properties or sending a satellite out to get pictures and trying to get a comprehension that way. That's the world of the five senses way, and that's useful. And that would be useful, my assumption is, to a master as well. But the master is realizing things through higher levels of meditation that are activating the intuitional plane, which isn't just a hunch. It's an ability to have a comprehensive understanding, that ability to understand the formulas, as we talked about in our series on soul magic, which is part of the book Treatise on White Magic, of how things work, to have the intuitions of patterns, and not just as guesswork. It's not just looking at abstract symbols and making guesses. That's maybe activating a little bit of the higher mind on the mental plane. This would be to comprehend, understand the patterns, the synthesis of those patterns, and what those patterns mean overall, and looking at that within the solar system. Not just in terms of, okay, Venus revolves around the sun, takes this many years, the Earth this many years, Mars, etc., or the temperature or the gaseous components, etc. This would be to understand how these factors help with the evolution of consciousness of our planet as a whole. Let's move on. So I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk about Sirius now before we go on with the quotes in the book. Why Sirius? What is this big deal about Sirius? Well, first of all, if you're not already aware, here is Sirius right here. So why do we have this notion of the masters being connected to the brotherhood on Sirius? So let's look at what we know about this star. Now, obviously, I'm not able to talk from the level of a master because I'm not a master. So I'm just giving you my comprehension at the level of consciousness that I am at here. First of all, we know that Sirius is only 230 million years old. Now that's a very short period of time. It is essentially a pretty new star here. Why? Because our planet Earth is billions of years old. So the appearance of Sirius is quite new. And when it arrived, supposedly Sirius had something to do in the esoteric lore in the Bailey books with the initial individualization of consciousness, where human beings, that would be group 1, we talked about that in our series on the 10 evolutionary groups, understand that they are individuals apart from the world around them. And in that video on Group 1, we talked about the mirror test. Every human being recapitulates, goes through the stages of these groups as far as they've reached in any incarnation. And we know that around a year and a half, maybe 2 years, a child, an infant, will look in a mirror, a toddler, and suddenly realize, oh, that's me in the mirror. Before that, they have no comprehension of that. Animals will do the same thing. There are a few animals that wake up. If an animal looks in a mirror and doesn't know that it's he or she in that mirror, they're not individualized. But a few animals are waking up and look in a mirror and know that they have an I, a separate sense of self. And Sirius, according to esoteric literature, had something to do with that process. So there's something about the initiatory energies of Sirius that are important in esoteric lore. And that has to do with its arrival in a way to then help our planet take a step in its evolution. Sirius is the brightest star in our heavens, in part because it is the seventh closest star to our solar system, but also because Sirius is a binary star system. There's actually two stars that are very close in distance, making it appear as if it's one bright star. Now that's interesting because we'll say this again. Sirius also has to do with the second ray of love and wisdom. So there's this two-ness that exists even within the star itself. And cultures around the world have always found Sirius to be significant. It's called by different names in different cultures. And one of the reasons for that is because no matter where you're at on the planet, it is the brightest star in the heavens. So naturally, there would be some added significance that people might put to that throughout the millennium. The location of Sirius is within Canis Major, also known as the Great Dog. And Sirius is often referred to as the dog star. Why? Because this faithful dog, it kind of looks a little bit like a dog, the stars in the constellation, follows on the heels of, here's the feet of, Orion, who is known as the hunter. And what is Orion hunting? He is chasing after the bull. This is Taurus. Taurus the bull that has, we'll come back to this, the Pleiades in it. So there's a very significant meaning going on here that we're going to talk about some more of Orion, the hunter, chasing the bull's eye. Aldebaran is actually the bull's eye that many people consider within the constellation of Taurus, that has the Pleiades in its either solar plexus or maybe sacral center. I'm assuming it's the sacral center of the bull, which has to do with the great creativity of these Pleiades, these seven sisters. There's more than 7 stars there, but there's 7 stars that you can mainly see with the naked eye there. And the Pleiades are a cluster of stars, and they, some say, believe that there is stars being created within this cluster here. So there's a creative, generative, and that's why I feel it's like sacral center, also ruled by the third ray of active intelligence going on here. Let's continue. So Sirius was also known as Osiris. This was Orion. Now we're looking at it as Osiris in Egyptian mythology, which, notice the name Cyrus is very close to the name Sirius, though the star Sirius, which is pictured here in this particular graph, this is the bullseye, Aldebaran here, was actually known as Isis here. So we have something about Isis and Osiris. And if you know Egyptian literature, Osiris has a lot to do with resurrection mythology here. And let's go on as to why that might be so. In ancient Egypt, when Sirius the star appeared over the horizon every August, the Nile would flood. Then around late October, November, the month of Scorpio, opposite of Taurus, the Nile waters would recede. So they flood in August, and then they stay flooded in September, but then October, November, during the month of Scorpio, the waters recede, and what do they leave behind? They leave behind what many believe to be the most fertile soil in the world. Isis, or Sirius, and Osiris, or Orion, were responsible then for the resurrection of the life-giving waters and the fertile soil that would benefit the masses. But who would benefit from this distribution? Here's what's important, especially in terms of masters. The dweller, which is a selfish monster or selfish monster-like leaders, represented by Scorpio, who is not yet triumphant. I have videos on this. You can go look for the Lessons on Scorpio video within the patreon.com channel if you want to know more. The enlightened leaders are represented by Taurus. They're the ones that Orion is pointing towards over here. So the hierarchy is looking for those who are enlightened leaders who can join the hierarchy in helping to guide the planet. So not only the Nile Valley remains fertile, but the entire planet remains fertile and not taken over by monster-like Scorpio creatures. Let's go on. So here we are zooming into the Nile, and we're kind of seeing the basin of the Nile, flooding the Nile. This is actually the sea. This is more the Nile here. To ensure that these resources were used for the good of the whole, Orion, or Osiris in Egypt, needed to move the waters, which represent what? The emotional distortions of the world of Maya, the world of the five senses, from Sirius, Isis, through his belt, the solar plexus representing power. So we see it down here. We have Isis is attempting to empower through the belt of Orion those who are the enlightened beings in the bullseye of Taurus. So we see that dynamic going on here. And here I have it illustrated in that picture. He does this by focusing, this is important, the eagle eye in the month of Scorpio. Scorpio is the scorpion at the lowest level. It's the eagle or phoenix at the higher level. So the eagle eye has to be focused in order to move through the right path, through the belt of Orion, to hit the bullseye of Aldebaran. And why is that? Because after we have the fertile waters in Scorpio, Sagittarius, the archer, comes, and he has the bow that will then take all that fertility, all that emotional energy, and send it through the arrow to Taurus and the bullseye. And what is that? That's spring. So everything that is collected here during the month of Scorpio will be sent forward in Sagittarius with its bow to arrive in Taurus when the flowers bloom and spring is rising, so that we have a fertile, wonderful spring season here. Why am I emphasizing all this? One reason is that the hierarchy is concerned again with these larger patterns of how things impact our planet as a whole, as connected not only to our solar system, but to things that go beyond our solar system and some of the mysteries of Sirius, which I'm exposing you to. Here's another thing we're going to look at, and that is the fixed cross. Those of you that know esoteric astrology know that there is the mutable cross, which the masses are on, and that then we have the fixed cross, which is 4 of the astrology signs that the disciples and initiates are on, and the masters are on the cardinal cross. Let's get into this a little bit more here. Scorpio is the eagle eye. Taurus is the bullseye. Leo is when the Nile floods and the leaders come together, who hopefully are going to use that flood water in the right way for the masses of Aquarius, the collective good here. And this is what the disciples and initiates are learning here. But the masters are looking for those disciples and initiates that know these lessons of how to direct these waters, not only in terms of the literal flooding of the Nile here, but in terms of the overall good of humanity and our planet as a whole, to keep our planet fertile. So Sirius is the waters of life, going through the fixed cross, and Aquarius is when the waters are released. Why then? Because in the months of February and March, Pisces, we have Aquarius is pouring out things from the water pot, pouring out the rains from the water pot that then will fill the Nile, that then can flood, that then can leave the fertility, that can give us a good spring here. Leo's when the waters are released. Scorpio, keep the eagle eye on right use of the waters. And Taurus is when we hit the bullseye. So the waters benefit everybody here. So you're starting to get a sense in a way of how a master would think. At least that's my supposition. Because they are concerned with large patterns that influence our earth, that influence the consciousness, that can influence the consciousness for good or for evil, trying to prevent the evil, the spiritual hierarchy, to benefit the life of our planet so it can evolve according to the plan in the right way. Let's go on. So the emphasis on the fixed cross is also seen in the book of Revelation. In the Christian tradition, I have a whole series on this in the YouTube channel as well as in the patreon.com Soul to Spirit channel, where again we have those 4 symbols of the fixed cross, seen as the eagle, the bull, the lion, and the human, that are found in the throne room, which is basically Shambhala, you could say, in the book of Revelation here. After the alignment with Sirius and the fixed cross have been made, we reach the turning point in the month of Scorpio that decides who will win, who gets to use the waters of life, the dweller or the angel. Now this is Arjuna, who is said to have the eagle eye in his ability to direct that bow towards Taurus. The angel of the presence will only win if the bullseye or third eye of Taurus is hit or opened by the arrow sent by Arjuna, the warrior in the Bhagavad Gita, and Arjuna's eagle eye is focused and concentrated enough. So the white magician doing soul magic has learned to use the third eye in the right way. And if you go look at that soul magic series, you will see that there are 3 ways that are talked about that third eye has to be used in the right way before it's fully opened here. It can be misused if only a part of it is opened, and that is explained in that series. It's, I believe, Rule 6. Look for the one on the third eye. And this is Drona, who is teaching Arjuna to aim and the right way to hit that third eye here. So this is kind of repetition here. All right, one more I think I have here. But despite Arjuna's ability to focus like an eagle's eye, he can still miss the bullseye if he's not guided by Krishna. Now, that's Krishna in the Hindu tradition. We could also say it's Christna, or Christ in the Christian tradition. There's no coincidence these words are very similar here. There's a lot of people that say that Jesus stayed when they went to Egypt, that he stayed in Egypt and was raised and trained for a long period of time by those many people that had gathered in the Library of Alexandria from all over the then known world, including Buddhists and Hindu monks, etc. They were down there in Alexandria. Alexander went into India and he took a lot of these people to Alexandria in Egypt, which is up in this region up here, where he built the Library of Alexandria, and these people commingled with each other. These traditions commingled with each other. Or, who is another Krishna Christ-like figure? Osiris, the spiritual counterpart of Orion. So Orion has to guide the process. Isis sends those waters through the belt of Orion, Krishna, who is guiding Arjuna, whose opposite of Taurus would be over here, to hit the eagle eye of the bull's eye of Taurus to open that third eye and use it correctly. In other words, none of us are successful unless we align with and invoke the spiritual hierarchy that direct the three kings that come to visit the Christ child. Who are the three kings? Well, they're the three pyramids that align, coincidentally enough, with the belt of Orion, built literally in this configuration. They align with the three stars of the belt in Orion, and again, to use power in a spiritual way. You're getting more and more exposed to the mysteries in plain sight on our planet that the spiritual hierarchy has left for us to discover. The spiritual hierarchy exists again within the triad, or the Buddhic plane: Buddha, Buddhic, Christ, Krishna, Christ, Orion, Osiris, all of them. And when we master this dynamic as it relates to our planet and this yearly cycle that we go through, we enter the cardinal cross. Sirius, this is from Esoteric Astrology by Alice Bailey, a chart there, is part of the cardinal cross here. And here's the cardinal cross words down here. And that's what the masters are on. Here's the little lines lining up here with the pyramids. One more thing about Sirius. Again, it's ruled by the second ray, love, wisdom. But there's something else that the Bailey books emphasize here that we want to talk about. Sirius also has a relationship to the Great Bear, put that constellation here, Ursa Major, and once again the Pleiades. The stars in the Great Bear are significant because the ladle, here's the ladle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the ladle of the Great Bear constellation as a whole points to Polaris, which is the North Star. It's where the north axis of our planet points. Now that changes every few thousand years. We're actually moving away from Polaris now to another star, which is in Cepheus the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. You go to a Christian church, they sing about that. This is singing about the coming of when the star shifts into Cepheus. But this ladle is important because this is where the 7 rays that are talked about in the Bailey books are said to come from. And those 7 rays in the ladle are then said to be distributed to the Pleiades, the 7 sisters of the 7 rishis that exist within Ursa Major. So they're within the belly or perhaps the sacral center, and then they are distributed back through here to Sirius. And then those ray energies come to our earth. So here's the way that we receive the 7 rays. Through the ladle of the Great Bear, into Pleiades, through the third eye, back to Sirius or Isis, to our earth. There's the Pleiades. That's a little explanation about Sirius. Let's go to the next quote in the book. Group conscious. A master of the wisdom is he who can consciously function as part of the heavenly man to whose body he may belong. He understands the laws governing groups and group souls. He governs a group soul consciously himself, a group on the path of return and formed of the lives of many sons of men, and he knows his place in the body systemic. He realizes the center in the body of the heavenly man by means of which he and his group are kept in sympathetic vibration, and conducts his relationship with other groups in the same body under certain definite laws. The value of meditation as a preparation for this activity will be realized by all thoughtful students, for meditation is the one means whereby the sense or separateness is transcended and unity with one's kind occultly comprehended. So let's go through this just a little bit. First of all, a heavenly man in the Bailey tradition is a way of speaking of a planet, the life of a planet. And there are a number of heavenly men or women, whatever you want to say. Within our solar system, we have a number of planets. Each one is referred to as a heavenly man because they're being a living conscious entity that exists within our heavenly realm of our solar system. And so a master is consciously functioning as part of the heavenly man to which he belongs, which would be our earth. And what is the master trying to do? He is governing groups and group souls because they know how to act as a soul. They exist on the plane of the solar angel where the soul is. And the master governs a group soul consciously himself. What is that? Well, first of all, there are 7 rays in the Bailey tradition. I just have 3 of them mentioned here because I didn't have time. It just looked way too cluttered to put them all over here. So let's just focus on 3. So every master, we are told, is predominantly one ray type. Ray 1 is will, purpose, and power. Ray 2 is love, wisdom. Ray 3 is intelligent activity. And that master is in charge of certain activities happening within our planet. This would be more along the lines of government here and influencing those people who are heads of government. Most Ray 1 types end up the head of a government somehow. But the majority of them are group 6 materialist, on the emotional plane, not yet on the spiritual path, very dominant and selfish, which in Esoteric Psychology Volume 2 is called the coordinated personality. I've called it the group 6 materialist because I think the word materialist describes in a shorter way what is talked about as a coordinated personality in the Esoteric Psychology 2 book. That coordinated personality is somebody who is, we're told, very selfish, tends to be a dictator, etc., etc. Now, that can be a dictator as a pope in the love, wisdom world of religion, could be a dictator in terms of intelligent activity in the business world. And in fact, in the book Treatise on White Magic, I believe it's Rule 9, it talks about the trifecta of the 3 kinds of agents that will come about and delude and deceive. This will be the great deluder, the dictator, and I forget what this is called. But these 3 were said to be appearing at some point in the future. This was over 100 years ago. And it's my argument that they are now here. I won't name names in this video. You can talk to me privately perhaps. But I believe that that perfect trifecta has appeared as predicted by the Bailey books at the personality group 6 materialist level. The master may have to work with them. Why? Because there aren't very many third and fourth degree initiates, let alone first and second degree initiates in the world. Group 7 and 8, 9, there aren't that many. We were told back at this point that there were only 400 group 8 disciples in existence. That was in Treatise on White Magic. So the master has to work with who the master can work with. And that's primarily the new group that is coming in, we were told in Esoteric Psychology Volume 2, is Group 6 Materialist or Coordinated Personalities. That's who a master has to work with. Master is trying to get Group 7, Group 8, mainly Group 9 people trained up to help mitigate the destructive impact of this perfect trifecta of Group 6 emerging. So a master is collecting people into groups, group souls. And we are told that every single ray has 7 subrays under it. So this would be a really difficult one to come into incarnation, because this would be will, purpose, power, and will, purpose, power. And if that individual that incarnates is a group 6 materialist, that's a very dangerous individual to the overall life of our planet. This would be will, purpose, power plus love, wisdom. Will, purpose, power plus ray 3 intelligent activity, etc., etc. So this particular master, who's more ray 2, would be working more with the idea of love, wisdom, Krishna, Christ-like, Buddhic-like consciousness. Education would be a big part, the educational institutions. And this would be in helping to direct the monetary flow, the business leaders. What do we have going on in 2025 when I'm doing this video? We have a general rebellion going on against the spiritual hierarchy, and the spiritual hierarchy attempting to gain control of that. Again, I'm doing this video in the month of Scorpio, and as I look out there in the world, I see that battle going on where these lower group 6 materialistic forces are attempting to maintain their hold, having distorted a lot of beliefs for humanity, that we all want dictators, that altruism is evil. So it's good to have all the money concentrated in the hands of just a few billionaires or trillionaires. That Christianity is really about a warrior like Jesus who comes back and is the biggest genocidal, bloodthirsty, narcissistic psychopath on the planet. That's the rebellion of thought and belief that is going on, that we could say the masters are attempting to get their many people that work in their groups that they work with to try and mitigate and squash, and that battle is going on in the month of Scorpio as I'm doing this video here. That water, then, that fertile water in Scorpio, next month of Sagittarius, will be focused into arrows to try and hit the bullseye next spring around May in 2026. When you're really doing this teaching, you are not seeing this as mythology, or where you just show up and you do a little full moon meditation and you go home. You're starting to see the overall expanse of the picture of the whole year. We're told in the Bailey books that the masters actually plan minimum 200 years in advance, and you're starting to see that. So that's it for this particular video. We'll have our final video, part 5, coming up. We didn't cover a lot of ground in this video, but there was a lot of conversation about it, and I hope you're starting to really grasp more and more where we're headed as we conclude this series. And if you want to catch up on the various videos, look for them at patreon.com, Soul to Spirit. You can purchase them, or you can simply become a patron for a short period of time and watch the videos that you can. Thanks for watching.